Hi, welcome to today's Leaders in Mental Wellness and Diabetes, where you will hear insights from the top minds in the world of diabetes care, hosted by Dr. Char.
Heidi Karner. She is a nutrition and diabetes educator at Joslin Diabetes Center. I'm already impressed. She's from Boston, Massachusetts, and I'm sure you can tell, Heidi, I'm a little south from there.
Yeah.
And she helps us make peace with food. That's the part that's so intriguing to me. Welcome, Heidi, to this podcast.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you for joining us. How in the world did you get started in this field? Again, this casual conversation that I like to have, I want us to just grow in community. And if we know each other a little better, somehow we trust each other better and we can help each other better. So how'd you get started helping us? Are you a patient of diabetes?
I am not, no. So it's actually started back in my undergraduate internship when I was going through my clinical studies, and it just kind of happened to turn out that I got placed in a lot of diabetes placements. I worked in several different endocrinology and diabetes departments. I worked in a Connecticut Children's Hospital in the children's pediatric department. So I got exposed to all different types of diabetes and different approaches. And it was really then that I decided I can have a real substantial impact on people's lives in this specific field. And so it was that, after graduation, I decided to go to grad school, and I specialized in health promotions with an emphasis on nutrition and public health. And so after grad school, I kind of thought, well, I think it's time to go back to this world of diabetes. I miss it very much. And so that's when I applied to Joslin. And so I've been at Joslin for coming up on 3 years now, and diabetes is so incredibly close to my heart. I think it started with this fascination almost of, all the pathophysiology and all of the things that go into diagnosis and treatment. And then now I would say it's this real passion for holding space for people living with diabetes and understanding their experience and helping them navigate living a full, healthy life with a chronic disease. And I think it's kind of progressed into this, and my approach to diabetes treatment and management is vastly different than it was when I first started. But I would say that over the years, my approach has certainly started to turn more into patient-centered, thinking about what is the patient really in need of, and how can this, where is the patient at, and what is it that they need? So I think that's kind of my elevator speech in short. But yeah, I have a very, 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 very prominent place in my heart for people with diabetes.
Well, it's my goal to grow that community of just knowing each other so trust can build. And honestly, having dealt with diabetes type 1 for 48 years, longer than you've been on the earth, girl. Yep. I have dealt with it. It's too late to tell me you can't live long and be happy.
Yep.
It's too late to tell me you can't have joy. But I have been there when we knew nothing about the professionals we were talking to, and we got this information and we went away overwhelmed. It's passing. Those days are passing, but still I remember that. Then we have a bunch of patients for a while resentful of the professionals because there's such a gap between us. Now, thankfully to media, thankfully to technology, thankfully we're living in the day where I'm actually watching change happen. And I hope I've knocked a few doors open, because I have worked alongside endocrinologists who have just let me see the patients early on, as opposed to years ago. Are you going to believe if I tell you, years ago, I've had physicians say to me, I would love for my patients to see you, but I don't want them to think that I believe they're crazy. That's because mental health was not mental health. Mental health was mental illness, and therefore it was not vogue. It's vogue now. I could do 3 private practices right now all by myself, but it's vogue, it's good, and I'm thankful that the doors are wide open, and I hope I've pushed a few of those open. But for those that follow me, they're not going to have to know. But my dream is, my daddy said it doesn't cost a bit more to dream big than little. And my dream is that we don't have, we as patients, resenting professionals, and professionals feeling like, oh my God, I don't have time. Insurance payment is only this much. I don't have time to, they're just going to have to get on the stick and do it. And now this conversation with a young, beautiful woman, professional in our field, in one of the top diabetes centers in the world, I'm guessing, or at least it's my opinion. I can only imagine where we're headed when you have that kind of a heart for my community.
Yeah, that is so cool. That is so cool. I mean, I loved hearing your experience too. And I think too, I think your love for diabetes, you can't not love people with diabetes when you start seeing clients living with this condition. Your heart goes out to people who especially feel this immense shame and guilt involved in their diagnosis. And I would say that's more disproportionately affects folks with type 2, because we have this narrative in our culture that, you did something to cause this diagnosis. And so that's one thing that I really, hone in on with folks, is removing the guilt, removing the shame, and saying, you would never say that. You would never say that someone with Crohn's disease or celiac disease caused their chronic disease. And so, taking away some of the guilt and shame, I really like to then that creates some room for what I like to call compassionate curiosity, right? So now we can start to see, what are these factors that impact the way that you feel, your health outcomes, more specifically your blood glucose levels, but thinking more so on that broader scale of, you didn't do anything to cause this, right? And having an understanding in that teachable moment of the pathophysiology of diabetes. What causes diabetes? What do we really know about it? And what do we not know? And I think that's one of the biggest pieces of my work, is being able to say, there's a lot that we still don't know. And we as humans, we like to jump to conclusions, right? We like things to be black and white and yes and no, and we like clear-cut answers for things. And I think, I'm sure you would agree with this too, that diabetes is so much more nuanced and complex than that. It's not as simple as just saying this does this or this caused that. It's individualized, right? Everybody's experience is vastly unique. And so I feel that my role in this is not to tell people what they can and can't do or what they should or shouldn't eat, but to support them in finding that out for themselves. Because I think that's really the way of the world, hopefully, and the way of healthcare too, is this patient-centered approach. What serves you and what doesn't, because that may look very different than me or, my next patient. So I think that's kind of an important approach.
It certainly is. There was a day when there was shame attached in my world, that if I wore a pump on my belt so I didn't see a roll, I didn't want to look fatter. And if I had a pump underneath on the belt buckle, hanging on that, I have been approached as if I were seeking attention for that, as opposed to hiding it. There have been days where I didn't take responsibility that was mine to take. So there's a balance to knowing that I shouldn't carry shame. My God, nobody would ask for this. On the other hand, it is the cards I'm dealt, and it's my responsibility, privilege, and obligation to own it and carry myself, so with being in mental health, I love to talk to people about who's talking in your head, a chicken bully, like, ain't nobody gonna tell me what to eat. That bully doesn't help me take responsibility.
Correct.
I didn't ask for this, poor old me. Is it going to help me take responsibility?
Correct.
But taking on shame from what others project to us doesn't either. See, here in the mental health world, I have also lived during the time where we had to embrace client-centeredness to the point of, if you said there's something that's your responsibility to do, that was not vogue. That was not appropriate. So it's kind of balanced now. But if it makes sense to you, when I was being trained and depression was being accepted, anxiety was being accepted, we needed to be client focused on not blaming them. Of course, that was good training.
Right.
But what it led to was a time where psychotropics went up, the need for somebody, you know, and as the world got more microwavable, everything got more, let's do it the easy way out.
Yeah.
But you see why I feel like I'm on the cutting edge is because you were too late. I'd been with diabetes too many years for that to impact me. You cannot not take responsibility.
Right.
While you have to love yourself and not carry shame.
Right.
What is it we say? Embarrassment, guilt, humiliation, and shame is one emotion just carried to a different level.
Right.
If we can teach people that alone on my side, and you can have the nutrition conversations on your side, and we can love each other, we can help that patient understand.
Yep.
Am I preaching, girl, or what?
Yes. Yes.
It is the key to what's making this world and community of diabetes better and helping us be better people in that world. Do you agree with that?
Oh, 100%, 100%. And I think I love that, you know, what you talk about taking on responsibility. The way in which I really kind of work with folks on that, I use this, you know, this concept of self-care, right? That like, here we are. Okay. So, you know, you have this diagnosis of diabetes. You may or may not have done anything to cause this, but at the end of the day, it's not your fault. It is your responsibility, right?
Absolutely.
And your body is yours, right? It's this gift that was given to you. We don't have to love it, right? We don't have to love what it looks like on the outside. We're not going to get up every single morning and say, oh, I love my body. It's perfect, right? But we can have gratitude for it and all that it does, right? And to be able to say, I don't have to be body positive, but I can be more neutral about the appearance of my body and my diagnoses. But my only responsibility is to care for it. That's it, right? I have to care for this vessel that I've been given. It's the only one I'm ever going to have. And, you know, it's flawed. You know, human beings, our bodies are flawed. We get sick, we get bumps and bruises and injuries, and it's part of our human experience. And whether or not it's our fault, doesn't matter, right? It's that our bodies are ours. And so I really kind of talk about this concept of body neutrality in terms of our outward appearance, right? And that we get so frustrated, especially when it comes to diabetes. And we talk about, you know, some of the more traditional approaches to diabetes treatment, which would be weight loss, right? And this concept of dieting. And, you know, there's this really, really vast narrative right now in the world that by shrinking ourselves, we can improve our health, right? And so we go to great lengths to do that, right? We restrict food, we exercise excessively, and we stress, right? We have stress around what we look like on the outside, our outward appearance, but also our health on the inside. And for patients with diabetes, there's a fear of, I want to do the right thing. Or on the opposite, there's a burnout, right? Of I'm tired of trying to do the right thing and I'm done, you know? And so my approach to this conversation of what if we could care for your physical body as is, right? What if we could improve your health and extend your lifespan and improve the quality of your life now without having to go to these extreme lengths to lose weight and to change the size and shape of your body. And I think when we can start to realize that that's possible and that I can actually just start to implement more self-care, I can start to see things like my A1C improving and my blood pressure reducing. And there's been a positive correlation with this concept of intuitive eating, and body neutrality is positively correlated with good health outcomes like A1C and time in range. And so when we start talking about health and caring for ourselves, I truly believe that self-care is not rooted in restriction or deprivation, but rather this concept of what feels restorative for you. And I think that's going to look different for each and every person.
Oh gosh, I love you. When I hear weight neutral and anti-diet, I can only imagine what that would feel like given almost 200 opportunities to eat daily,
Yep.
given diabetes my entire adult life. And that's a long time. I could only imagine a world with weight neutral and anti-diet nutrition. Now, here's where it fits with me with my methodology. I think when we use motivation, habits, and willpower, willpower has a battery life. Motivation comes in waves. Habits work until they don't.
Yep.
I can be doing good. Somebody dies. I have to go across the country. My whole environment's different. And there goes my diet.
Not sustainable.
Okay. So I've had a lifetime of being a human like everybody else. And then a human with dealing with the effects of diabetes, that every bite that goes into my mouth has to be monitored, thought about, have to make sure I've got. Now I used to pee on a stick. Now I have a phone that tells me every 5 minutes. I mean, all kinds of good things have happened in life, right? But here's where I think we agree from the mental health and the physical nutrition part. And I love it. I believe that when we start from the side of behavioral change, it's not sustainable.
Yep.
And it's not sustainable because we grow up with what's been embedded in what I call our operating system, like a big computer.
Yep.
And we have these beliefs and all this understanding that until we change that, we're not going to get to different outcomes. But since our brain was given to us to bring us what we want, how confusing is it when I say, I want a cupcake?
Yep.
And I'm saying, no, I've got to force myself not to eat that cupcake.
Right.
I can't have that because I have diabetes, and 30 years down the road, I may not have a toe. That separation is because we've learned a system of fix the habits first. Now we're getting more popular, but that thought process has not been popular because habit builders are the most famous of all.
Yeah.
And do you know, ultimately that works for habit builders is that they've ultimately started from another end of us, and all of us that gain the success, we are one, right? So we're not against each other. But when they start there, they go in and gain the understanding you're talking about first. You know, if today I can be not nutrition neutral, diet, weight neutral.
Weight neutral. Yep.
If I can be that, and my goal is to get 70 ounces of water inside me, because I know what that's doing to my brain and to my system.
Yep.
And if I can make sure no high fructose corn syrup, that's a new love of mine to get out of my world. That's so common. That's not stopping being an advocate for myself.
Right.
But when you go from the side, you're not starting on the side of behavioral change.
Right.
When you start with that understanding first, and what I call change, bring what you want, tell your brain what you want so you don't confuse it. It'll bring the behavioral change.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to clinical studies that prove that. That's my next big goal.
Yeah. Well, and you know, in some ways what you're kind of describing, specifically really honed in on the food piece of things, is really what we call intuitive eating. It's this concept, it's a compassionate eating framework that's rooted in self-care, right? So it's this concept that, you know, we'll use your cupcake example, right? That first we establish what we call food freedom, right? Where there's no good or bad foods, right? People can be good or bad people, right? Food can't be good or bad, right? And that all food plays a really important function in our lives. We're going to get something different out of every food, right? But one of my trademark lines that I say to my clients is, if I were to say to you right now, a bowl of baby carrots and a slice of chocolate cake are equally as nourishing, what would you say? Right?
I'd say, girl, get out of here.
Right? Equally as nourishing. And, the question is, well, what does that mean? What does nourishment mean? Right? We have to, like, to your point, but we have to get underneath those beliefs that we have from the get-go. What were we told about food? What were we told about our bodies? What do we deem acceptable? What do we deem unacceptable? Right? And a lot of times we put these unacceptable things in a basket, right? So that's a certain size and shape body. That's a certain BMI. That's a certain food group, sweets, candies, pasta, whatever, right? This is the bad, unacceptable group. Our relationship with these things, taxed, strained, stressful, right? But this is life, right? This is the birthday parties with cupcakes. This is the pizza parties. This is the I'm now ill and my body's changing. I got COVID and maybe I gained a little bit of weight or I lost a little bit of weight. Bodies change. And there's a variety of food at all times for most individuals. So when we're sitting here saying, well, this is what's acceptable, we talk about anxiety. What is an anxiety response? It's looking at something and saying, something's off here, right? We talk about that kind of that fight or flight, that primal drive, right? That sympathetic nervous system. When, we think back to maybe there was a time we're standing in the woods and we see a grizzly bear, right? And we think there's our heart pumping blood to, shunting blood away from our digestive system and going into our extremities and our brain and our heart. So there's our rapid heart rate, right? There's our digestive issues when we're experiencing stress, right? Because now the blood flow is disrupting normal digestion, right? And so stress, and the stress, or what I like to call the weight of expectations, weight stigma, right? I need to lose weight in order to improve my health, right? It's exhausting. And we're carrying this incredibly heavy burden. When what if we could lift that off and say, my body is not inherently bad or wrong. And I have full freedom to choose what foods make me feel my best and which ones don't. And so when we start eating in that way, right, that no foods are off limits, but let's start getting curious about what foods make you feel what, right? What foods impact your blood sugar how, right? What foods give you more energy? What foods keep you full and focused for longer? And what foods don't? And then how can we put them together in a meaningful and mindful way? So there's no restriction, right? It's not, oh man, I wish I would have had that cupcake, right? Because what happens when we're standing there and we're looking at that cupcake, oh, I really shouldn't have that cupcake. I have diabetes. I really shouldn't have that cupcake. You can't stop thinking about the cupcake, right? Like you want that cupcake for the remainder of the day versus, well, what if I knew more about how I could incorporate that cupcake in a way that's not going to necessarily elevate my blood sugars, in a way that's going to help me feel full, and then I can move on, right? I'm not obsessed about the cupcake. I'm not thinking about it. And then I'm not going to go home
and eat 3 cupcakes.
No. Right. Exactly. We call that the restrict binge cycle, right? Where I'm going to be so good. I'm going to be so good. I'm going to be so good. I'm going to be on my diet. And then what? We just say, we call it, it's called the what the heck syndrome, right? Where it's just that like, screw it. I'm done. Right? To your point about, something happens. I got to fly across the country. The holidays come up, right? So life happens. And if your diet or your eating plan or whatever it is that you're referring to, that you're following to a T, the stringent structure, if you can't do that starting today for the rest of your life, then there's nothing sustainable about that, right? And we're going to be stuck on this yo-yo cycle of, I'm going to be so good, and then I'm not, and then I'm going to be so good, and then I'm not. And we start ascribing our moral value to our success, whether it be our blood sugars or our weight. And a lot of times we picture those two things very much together, when at the end of the day, more and more research is coming out showing that's not necessarily true. The size and shape of your body cannot and does not determine your health or your health outcomes. Right.
So good, so good, so good. Now you brought what I need to segue into is the fact about anxiety. My little question here says, how does anxiety show up with your patients? And you just already shared that. You're ahead of me. But with the anxiety, with the fight or flight, again, within that operating system, we're set up to recognize emergencies. We are stress that is in an emergency state. We are equipped to follow. We're equipped to handle. It's not like it's out of our range of handling. And so stress is only our responsibility to handle after the emergency's gone. If I've had a low blood sugar in an airport and my brother's teasing me, for whatever reason, brothers do that, and I'm hanging on with a mood change to say, get out of my face, while my sugar is leveling back out. But it's my responsibility, once the blood sugar is normal, to not stay mad at my brother, to not keep the mood. I have to let me and everybody else off the hook. So do you see where I believe these kind of conversations, and a world when we're all one, that not just nutritionists get involved in the circle of friends, but mental health does. Because when you teach me and others that shame has no place, and my extra 15 pounds will go and be sustainable because I've gained and lost to excess 3 times in my 100 years of living. And there is some responsibility to take in that. But what I'm hearing you say is, if you get a patient newly diagnosed and you help them understand where they are, they're quicker going to establish a sustainability about what they need in their own health, be it their size or be it their A1C, all that we do need. Plus me on the side of, okay, you had a big fight with your husband after that low blood sugar. Now let's talk about that, because there's no room for shame in that either. There's no room in guilt, because your blood sugar went down after all you had done to do the right things. But your mood did change. Your mood, it's somebody else's hopeful pleasure to understand that. But we have to get to where we accept that. But then the responsibility when you come to see me is the learning that place of understanding that now I have no reason other than I'm mad and I'm the boss of my emotions. And once I understand that's all it is, I can take responsibility and make that go away just by being kind and smiling. Because there's this study that says in the 1950s, raise your hand, smile, now try to feel like poop. You can't, because it's a posture. It's a posture of your heart. It's a posture of joy. And that brings me to joy. Tell me, I get where we're one in this, right? I want you to tell me how HAES aligned it is. I read where it says eating healthy, physical activity, good sleep, stress management, and finding joy. Help me understand what that is, because on the other side of this boat, it's kind of like we're in the boat together. We are helping people. You're in Massachusetts, I'm in Nashville. We talk different, we like different music, but we are people, sameness. So while you're teaching freedom with nutrition, I'm teaching freedom with emotions. And joy is our birthright.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Help us understand that piece.
Absolutely. So what HEAS stands for is health at every size. And it's a movement.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it's a movement that is rooted in this concept that, every body has the potential to be healthy. And defining health for yourself, I truly believe health is actionable behaviors, right? Weight is not a behavior, right? I can't walk out of here right now and decide I'm going to shrink myself 30 pounds, right? It's not as simple as that. But I can walk out of here right now and decide, to your point, go drink some water. I could go take a walk on a sunny day. I could lay down and take a nap, or watch a funny movie, right? Take a bubble bath. So these are these health promoting behaviors. This health promoting behaviors are more positively correlated with health outcomes than your weight. And so this is kind of the concept of health of every size. By actually acting on our health and saying, well, regardless of the number on the scale, my body has innate worthiness and I can promote health within it. And so that is where we kind of bring in the joy aspect of things. And in my spectrum, it's food, right? It's finding joy in food again, right? And this idea of nourishment and sustenance. Because if you think about what the real definition of self-care is, I think a lot of times we envision, go and get our nails done or going to a spa day. And of course, that's still technically self-care, but self-care is engaging in behaviors that keep us alive. Right? Eating food is an act of self-care. Moving your body in a way that you enjoy, joyful movement, is an act of self-care, right? So it's these behaviors that we can almost rely on or lean on when we're really struggling with our diabetes burnout, when we're really struggling with what life has to throw at us. Okay, but I have these behaviors that are there for me that make me feel a little bit fuller. Right. And so when I'm talking with my clients, I always talk about, we all have this 20-gallon tank, right? And that everybody can operate at a different fuel level. For me, I've identified I can't function. I can't show up for myself or my clients or my friends or my family at anything less than 10 gallons. Okay. That's just me, right? I've identified that if I start to get below that, I'm irritable. I'm tired. I'm fatigued. Right. And so I've identified, okay, it's my responsibility to fill up my tank. Mm-hmm. Right. And again, we all know people who can run on fumes, and that's fine. Right. But you and I may not be those people. And that doesn't make us any less determined or motivated, right? It just means this is how we best operate. So find your minimum amount of fuel and then find what fills you up. Right. And that's joy, right? So it's finding joy in that new recipe, not being scared of new foods and a vastly varied and balanced diet. It's finding enjoyment and pleasure and satisfaction in the food that we're eating again. Because for people with diabetes, especially people with type 1 diabetes, that joy has typically been stolen from you, right? It's that now carbohydrates are no longer warm and satisfying and savory, but rather a number that I have to type into my palm or, count and inject for. So being able to reestablish that, realign that healthy relationship with food. All food can fit. What food tastes good? What food do you have pleasure from? And then how can we incorporate this concept of gentle nutrition to then create the health goals or bring about the health goals that you're looking for from a glycemic standpoint or a cardiovascular standpoint. So joy can be found in self-care, which is kind of the coolest piece of it. And that is truly, I think, and I believe, what it fills us up the most is things that bring us joy.
Oh my goodness. It's such an honor to meet you today. It's an honor to have you here. Wow. And when I read on LinkedIn and places and it says you communicate with excellence, sometimes somebody wrote your bio. Sometimes it's just good verbiage. I'm telling you, young lady, you do it so well.
Oh, thank you.
You do it with such excellence. It's just amazing.
Thank
and
you.
That smile, you must have a pretty mama somewhere. You didn't get that all by yourself, girl.
Yeah, no, I definitely had some help. And also, some dental work that was paid for too. So, but yes, no, I mean, I feel very passionate about this work. And I mean, I didn't always, though. I'm not going to lie. There was a point in my career where I didn't always start with this weight neutral health at every size approach. I was clinically trained, and I was trained very much so in this weight centric paradigm. And
traditional.
Right?
We all were.
Exactly. And it's that, okay, patient comes in, newly diagnosed. My responsibility, according to that traditional approach, would be to say, okay, let's calculate your calories and let's figure out, how many pounds you need to lose in order to improve your health. And I think back to those conversations and just that, like, I mean, you're looking at people in the eye thinking, oh, I got to do what now? I was just told that I have this chronic progressive disease. And now you're telling me that now it's my responsibility to then restrict foods that bring me joy, engage in exercise, excessive exercise that I don't find enjoyable, all to shrink myself for this greater good, right? And so here, and some patients are more motivated than others and are able to achieve that success. But here's a really important concept that I want to bring light to, is that prolonged and sustainable weight loss has not been found to be a realistic research outcome. They're finding that actually a systematic review and meta-analysis looked at about 31 long-term longitudinal studies on dieting, and we'll define dieting as calorie restriction, right? And they found that the majority of the individuals were unable to maintain this weight loss long-term, and they found that 2/3 of the individuals who did end up losing weight regained it back within 10 years. So this idea that this idea of weight cycling can actually impose more harm on the human body than good. Mm-hmm. And so it's this concept of self-care. I'm going to care for my physical body. I'm not going to try and shrink it or mold it into something else that somebody else deems more appropriate. What's appropriate for me is my health and the way that I feel and the quality of my life. And food and movement and rest and hydration and stress reduction all make up a good quality of life. Engaging in regular and consistent self-care and deriving joy from that, right? And deriving confidence from our ability to care for ourselves. When people talk to me about, well, I really want to lose weight for reasons other than just my health. I want to lose weight because I feel like I will feel more confident, right? I hear that all day long. I want to feel more confident in my body. And so a big piece of my work is saying, let's figure out why we ascribe so much value to this one aspect of who we are. And I always like to say, this is you, right? This is your morals, your values, your experience, your hardships, your trauma. And then this is your body. Okay, this is going to shrink. It's going to get bigger. It's going to change. It's going to get wrinkly. That's just life. That's our human experience. But nothing changes this. Right? And then if we can really care for this, live in alignment with our values, right? And most of us value this concept of compassion. Mm-hmm. We tend to be able to show it to other people effortlessly. Can never seem to do it for ourselves, right? And so by living in alignment with that value, that self-compassion, now we can be more neutral about this thing on the outside that's just encapsulating who we are. But at the end of the day, this thing, we need it, mm-hmm. right? We need it to get around. We need it to get from point A to point B. We need it to actually live our life and live out our values. So there's our responsibility to care for it. Right?
That is so good.
Right?
So good.
Yeah.
I'm going to use. Can I use that example?
Absolutely. I'll actually tell you, I have a favorite quote, and I hate it because I have not been able to find who said it. I heard it on another podcast that I was listening to, and they didn't know who said it either, but if anybody knows who said this quote, please let me know. It says, society has traditionally told us that our bodies are our life's biggest masterpiece, right? So, we're meant to mold and shape and diet and exercise and do all of these things to turn our body into our masterpiece, our life's work, right? But in reality, our body is just the paintbrush that allows us to paint the masterpiece of our life. Right? We need this paintbrush, and we need a working, functioning paintbrush. So let's care for our paintbrushes, right? Let's clean them, let's wash them, let's care for them in a mindful and meaningful way. But at the end of the day, what really matters is that picture that we're painting, right?
Yes. You are amazing. I am writing that down.
Right? What a big quote.
I'm going to move this.
Yeah.
Over to the mental health world. Is that okay?
Absolutely. Please.
Nutrition, body, mental health.
Yes.
Right there. So when you see me doing it, I'll give you credit.
Okay, good.
I'll write your name or so. Okay, as we end this podcast today, I usually ask for a tip that you could give to somebody. What I want to do today, after this meeting, I'm going to go have lunch with my husband. He's in another part of the city on a computer in an office talking to somebody in another part of the world. He's going to come pick me up. We're going to go. We already know. I know what he's going to get. He knows because we've learned that state. I'm going to get a salad.
Yeah.
We just know what we're going to have.
Yeah.
But what if I get there and old friends show up and they say, I saw you coming in and I know you love, I'm making this up as I go. I bet you can't tell. I bet you can't tell. But I saw you and I know what you love. I've ordered that for you. Okay. So now I want to self-love. I'm just now learning that my body is just the paintbrush.
Yep.
I'm trying and working with you in understanding good self-care, but I'm new at it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Tell me what you would share with that person just for lunch today.
Sure. Yeah. Well, a couple things, right? First thing I would ask is that what you want? Right? First and foremost, right? Because some days that friend may say, hey, I got you this turkey club because I know you really love it, right? And you may be sitting there, maybe it's I don't know, you're in Nashville, right? So maybe it's really warm. And for whatever reason, when you got to that restaurant, you thought, oh, I'm really looking forward to that crunchy, fresh salad, and I love that dressing that I get on it. And what I really like when you delve into the book Intuitive Eating, it talks about what we call the diet rebel versus the rebel ally. And so this is when we would want to bring that rebel ally out. And this is basically setting boundary with friends and family, saying, oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate you getting me that. I love those turkey clubs. I'm going to grab that. I'm going to bring it home with me. But today I'm really in the mood for that salad. Okay. So you're holding your ground. You're saying, you know what I'm really in the mood for is a crunchy, fresh salad. Right. And that's what I'm going to put in my body. Right. Now, go back to the beginning. Let's say your friend said you're going to this restaurant and you're thinking, okay, guess I'm going to get the salad that I always get because it's a salad and I'm supposed to get it. And that's the healthy thing to get. And then you get there.
We see how long that lasts, right?
Right. And then your friend gets there. I ordered you this turkey club. I know you love the turkey club. And immediately you heard that. I love that turkey club. Right. So the compassionate thing to do and the intuitive eating thing to do would be, thank you. I am going to enjoy this sandwich. And you're going to sit there with your friend and you're going to eat this sandwich mindfully. You're going to take that first bite and you're going to sit there and think, oh my gosh. I haven't had this turkey club in so long. Maybe you'll say that to your friend. Maybe you'll start conversating about the food to bring that present moment in. Wow, isn't this so good? This is salty and fresh and crunchy. You're going to make an intentional decision to swallow. You're going to feel what that feels like, that food going from your mouth into your stomach. You're hungry, and now you're slightly less hungry, slightly less hungry, slightly less hungry, until we reach a point called satiety. And we get these cues all the time. For my satiety cue is that deep breath you get when you're eating, right? Oh, that was good, right? Or maybe you start to get warm. You start taking your jacket. Oh, is it hot in here? Right? So these are cues that your body starts sending you. Okay, I'm reaching the point where I don't need any more nourishment. So I'm going to eat that turkey club mindfully listening to my hunger cues. Now, there is nothing unhealthy about that.
And there's a part in your training, I'm guessing, where you help people understand, again, in the brain, changing some beliefs, but you help them understand in that process that when to not say, oh, heck, I've blown it now, I'll start tomorrow. That stops the binging.
Correct.
You help them understand, not when they just restrict more, but when they get the understanding and they change so that their brain goes and gets them the behaviors they've been looking for and deserve.
Exactly. If I haven't allowed myself to have a turkey club in 6 months, I am going to eat that entire thing. Who cares if I'm full? I'm going to finish it. Right. But what if I could have a turkey club tomorrow if I wanted it, or the next day, or the next day? Maybe I'll just stop when I'm starting to feel full and I know I can always have another one. Right.
You're so good. And I find it fascinating, interesting, and almost unbelievable that you, being as young as you are, you were raised in that traditional model as well. Because I feel like because of my age, that's why I was raised in that. But we've not seen the good changes for nearly as long as I wish we had.
Yeah.
But because we are seeing those, we don't have to separate into a world that I've watched be traditional versus functional, or
Right.
like reversing versus, like when type 2 people are changing, and they some call it reversing and some call it
Remission.
Remission. That's it. I
Mhm.
don't care what you call it, as long as we're helping everybody get
Yeah.
better.
Yeah.
Now, I will say Google University has a lot of information, and I
Yeah.
think the only place I'm a snob is I try not to be, but I think when someone is giving information and they've not studied, they do not have the research, they do not have the understanding. So
Yeah.
when you start giving that information away to somebody, you could cause some damage.
Absolutely.
But when a young lady has been to school, a young lady has seen both sides of that coin and has found a methodology that will change people's lives in a self-care better way, who more do we need to lift up in this community and get your name abroad? Now, I will tell you, it's probably not me today that has enough people that can get your name abroad.
That's okay.
But,
That's okay. Yeah.
but when we all do it one
Yep.
at a time
Yep.
from our boat, and then we get in the bigger piece of water, we're going to make a change in this world. And I can only imagine what good you're doing at Jocelyn Diabetes Center, because while that is the greatest, I've heard so many good reviews through the years about that, the people that come are just like me.
Yep.
Every patient that comes in the door has the same system that they have to navigate through with lots of different information.
Yep.
So I'm very grateful today that you're there in that bigger world to help more people.
Yeah.
And I hope someday we can do something else together.
Yeah, I would love that. I would love that.
I would absolutely. I would love to be a little fly on the wall, a bird sitting on your shoulder. I'd like to follow you around at work one day.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
And just see you operate.
And let me know too, because, one of my passions too in this realm is getting this, to your point about like getting this word out, right? Because we live in a very weight-centric society, so that's just the norm. But to have an understanding that like maybe I don't have to put my body through the ringer in order to achieve and promote health. It's a small world, but we're growing and we're getting a lot more traction. And that this idea of intuitive eating, anti-diet, health at every size, it's rooted in a patient-centered, compassionate approach. And so more and more providers each day are kind of realizing, wait, this is what patients are looking for. This is what patients need. And as a provider, I can attest my quality of life as a healthcare provider has significantly improved, because now I actually feel that I'm living in alignment with my values, right? As opposed to imposing this weight of expectation on my clients and saying, here, lose this X amount of pounds before the next time I see you, versus now it's so much more than that. And it's so much more meaningful work. So I would say too, if you are interested in kind of exploring this world a little bit more, the two main books that I recommend would be obviously the Intuitive Eating book. It's written by my colleague, Evelyn Tribble, and it has a companion workbook that I use with my clients. And it's absolutely something I work very closely with a lot of mental health professionals and counselors and therapists, and they actually use the Intuitive Eating workbook as well with clients, because there's a lot more than just the food piece to it. And then the second one that has a little bit more historical background, if anybody has questions about kind of the validity of some of the things I've been saying or the research to support it, there's a book written by another colleague of mine, Christy Harrison, called Anti-Diet. And this is one of my staples. I recommend it to just about every one of my clients. It really goes through the history of this weight-centric paradigm, BMI, and where did this start? And it kind of talks about the historical significance of things like fat phobia and weight stigma. So two awesome, really, really good resources. And yeah, I think, let me know if you need anything else. I've got different kinds of resources, websites. Oh, the last thing would be, there's a website called No Way. So WEIGE, WEIGH, noway.com. It's a fabulous resource for both patients and providers with diabetes. It's a weight neutral resource for current recommendations on how we can treat and approach diabetes with this extreme emphasis on weight.
So let me tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to order both of those books because I want the workbook.
Yeah. Oh, it's awesome.
And for others. But I'm going to order the anti-diet book. But when I look at it, here's what I want to say this as a patient that works just because I'm common, right? There's nothing extra about me. It's a thick book, and I'm thinking, when in the world would I have time to read that? Mm-hmm. But in alignment with the self-care you have shared with us today, who says I have to read it all in one sitting? Who says I have to do it right now?
Nope.
I'm going to buy the book. I'm going to sit down and make a plan, or it'll land on a shelf, and I'll mean to do it.
Yep.
And I'm going to start giving myself tiny pieces until I understand.
Yes.
Diet in a better whole way.
Absolutely. And it's on Audible too. So if you have a
commute, oh my God, yes.
If you have a commute or anything like that, I mean, that for me too has been a game changer, because I have so many books that I've been wanting to read and absorb, and it's on Audible. And that's been a big game changer for me too, just being able to learn and absorb information in that unique way too. I think especially when we're depleted and exhausted after a long day, it's like the last thing we want to do is pick up a book. So to be able to just kind of sit there, and whether it's in the shower or on your commute home or whatever, and just kind of absorb this information, it's just uplifting too, because you hear things again that are rooted in compassion. So it's just a really positive a book to read.
But see, nobody wants to take the time to sit with a therapist or a nutrition specialist, for that matter, and work an hour a week to delve into what are those old beliefs? Where are they at? Because as we bring those up and we get rid of them, that's when habits help.
Yep.
Is days of that and 3 cycles of that, and then our brain changes. It's not that those things are wrong. We're going at it from the unsustainable style. But when we from the angle of input and changing that, we don't even have to sit through those long therapy sessions to find them.
Right.
We literally can find truth in what we want. And there's where I have my methodology of how to get that in there. You have yours.
Yep.
And then our brain brings us. So I want to put those things in there. I love to read. So nothing better do I like on a rainy day to sit in a porch swing or on the side of a bed and just read, and that's awesome. But with very little time to do that, the audibles are great while I walk, different things. But it's a tool. I want to leave it with this. It's a tool to change without effort some of those beliefs. And it takes 10 minutes to change a belief.
Yep.
It takes hours to go find it. I was taught how to go find it. Well, I kind of learned that as a pathway, but it can take 10 minutes to change a belief. So while I'm out walking and I'm hearing that, oh my goodness, what a tool, what amazing work you are doing. Thank you so very much for joining me.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Ever need me? I'm your girl.
Absolutely.
Bye.
Bye-bye.